welcome everyone. Thanks for joining to the Beyond Logos and Websites kind of webinar fireside chat that we're having with Robbie Knock. My name is Nate Prorock. I'm director of the UCSF LaunchPad. And what the UCSF LaunchPad is that it's an entity that's focused on student and trainee entrepreneurship. And not so much, you're going to start this next, company. It's certainly that, but it's also really teaching this entrepreneurial mindset. So to all folks, you could be from UCSF, we have a wider range in our community. And so this is kind of extended to, what we're doing. We're partnering with Stanford on this, and Shirley and Robbie and folks from, anybody who has a Zoom link is totally welcome and encouraged to join. We're happy you guys are here. And so some of the events that the UC Launchpad does is that we have hackathons, we have apathons, we throw mixers, we do a pretty robust internship, as well as these chats with excellent entrepreneurs, operators, people with fun stories to tell. And that brings us to what Robbie's going to be doing here for us. So I'm going to pass it on to Shirley. She'll introduce herself and her role at Stanford, and then we'll introduce Robbie and get started.
Awesome. Thank you, Nate. Hey, everyone. Thank you for showing up. My name is Shirley. I work at the Stanford Healthcare Innovation Lab, and we have a program called Stanford Pipeline where we work with healthcare founders like yourself. So we'll hold events like these throughout the year with guest speakers in healthcare innovation or entrepreneurs or different founders to speak to our community. And so we have weekly pitch sessions on Fridays, and all of you are welcome to join, where we provide feedback on decks and pitches. And our team can also help connect you to different mentors and connect you to different funding sources as well. We've helped quite a few founders with their fundraising needs at this point. And so, yeah, it's a really great community of founders, specifically in healthcare. And we welcome all of you to join. Yeah, I'll kick it back off to you, Nate or Robbie.
Great. Thanks, Shirley. So it's my great pleasure to introduce you guys to Robbie Knock. Robbie is the Associate Vice President of Entrepreneurship and Professional Practice at Art Center College of Design. He is driven to educate and inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs, inventors, and creatives. He has a background in photography, digital technology, and startups. Robbie's work focuses on the unique value that art and design bring to the successful creation and development of new businesses and organizations. As a teacher, mentor, and advisor, Robbie works with a wide range of students, professionals, and founders seeking to inspire unconventional solutions through collaborations across creative, research, and innovation communities. Robbie is a practicing visual artist and passionate about the outdoors, surfing, skiing, and hiking whenever possible. So without further ado, my great friend, Robbie Knock, the floor is yours.
Right. Thank you all for having me, Nate and Shirley, and for all of you on the Zoom today. And I'm going to jump into some slides. But before doing that, we have a few activities, experiments designed to get you thinking and to try to really bring you into the mindset that I'm going to be sharing with you today about the key role that design plays for healthcare, health tech, biotech innovations and entrepreneurs. And So yeah, my background really coming through the humanities, studied literature as an undergraduate at the University of Edinburgh, worked in photography and new media across a range of different venues and formats, both in commercial and advertising photography, and then into immersive media and entertainment design. And that led me from Edinburgh to London to Los Angeles. Started a company here for map sharing, a GPS software company. Really struggled to navigate the venture world as a creative and literature graduate, and got kind of looked at with an odd reception, especially when I was pitching in the Bay Area and looking for traditional seed funding for a tech startup. And that got me thinking a lot about the role that art and design play in venture development and the expectations that the community might have about artists and designers as founders. And so it's been a great passion and the last 10 years of my career to really ensure that here at Art Center, we're teaching business and entrepreneurship in a way that connects directly to the professional success of our students and alumni, and doing so over the course of the lifetime of the challenges that you encounter as a professional. So want to bring all of that here to you today, and a lot of what where my work is going and where my focus is going is, rather than bringing entrepreneurship and innovation into the design profession and educational realm, so to really look the other way and to see ways in which art and design might be transformative for entrepreneurship outside of the creative economy. And done a lot of work with different incubators and accelerators and startups across a lot of different verticals and sectors. But healthcare, health tech is becoming more and more important to me personally, and more of a passion, and more of an area where I think there's huge opportunity. So I'm going to jump into these slides, and I'll get my screen share going here, which is always a little trick with the order of what you share. So we'll get that going, and then we will get this going here. And we'll jump right in. So first, I'd love for you all, and Shirley, I believe, has created like a poll here with 2 questions for you all that will really help me tailor my comments today to your needs. So first question is, identify something that you believe is well designed and briefly note 3 reasons why. This will be fast, so take no more than the next minute. We're at just at 4:11, so just until 4:12, think about and draft a response to submit. And then also let me know what type of venture you're developing, what kind of health, medical, biotech product, service, system, platform, drug, therapy, you name it. What are you working on? So if you wouldn't mind giving me some of your attention to that for the next minute. And this is not a trick question. It really simple, straightforward. It can be one-word answers. It doesn't have to be articulate, or the less you think about it, the better. Okay, we've got good. We've got 1 of 1 answered. See how many participate. Okay, so I'm glad you're getting in there, and we'll give you a few more minutes. Maybe by minutes, I mean seconds. Okay, 2 of 19, love it. Good work, everyone, on the 2 side of the 19. 5 of 19, all right. 26% participation, that's starting to be something we can work with here. Thank you for doing this, and we'll give you another 30 seconds here. Ideally, we would get to 10 of 19, cresting above the 50% mark. Oh, we've lost someone already though. So now we're at 18, so 33%. Okay, well, we're not gonna push this too hard. So if you're still working on your answers, submit them there. And then Shirley, I don't know if you can share, if there's an easy way for you to share the results.
Let's see. Oh, can you see the results on your screen? Otherwise, I can share screen.
Let's see. Stop sharing, share results. No, okay. I'll exit my screen share and just take a quick. Okay, there we go. Stop share there. Okay, if you could share the results.
Yes, let me bring that up. So this is the
Okay, something well designed, coordinated, clear, SaaS platform. The fly sticker. That's interesting. Nest thermometer. Okay, great. Consumer data platform. Cancer liquid biopsy, digital health, medical device, digital health. Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Shirley. And thank you to everybody who submitted that. And I'm going to share my screen again and we'll get back into the presentation here. Okay, so we're not going to spend too much time assessing those answers just yet, but I want you to, as I'm kind of overviewing the topics and subjects today, I want you to think about those things that you've identified as well designed and think about them relative to some of what I will be sharing. And I hope that this helps you kind of expand your understanding of what might be unique about successful design. So over the course of the next 25 minutes, and we'll make sure there's time for Q&A at the end and discussion. I really want to answer your questions directly. Over the course of this time, we're going to work on really rethinking the mindset around design and how that applies to health ventures. We're going to dive deeper into the different design disciplines and how those apply to different stages of your development. We're really going to look at that phased application, what you need when and why. And ultimately throughout, really going to try to reinforce the human consequences, the human outcomes, the human impact that design can bring to the table. And what I would say at the start is that scientists and healthcare professionals, like designers, are not necessarily trained with all of the tools to be successful as entrepreneurs in traditional education. So it's a bit of a leap to go from studying science and medicine to actually starting something. And when you're making that leap, you're covering a lot of basic foundational skills, and there's a broad understanding of the business, marketing, sales, management, financial tool sets that you need to bring to the table. But often design is overlooked in there. And so I think that one of the first big steps is to see yourself as somebody that can learn design, bring design to your path as an entrepreneur, and also hire designers, build designers into your team and into your organizational structure. So some of the topics that we're going to weave through are the different definitions of design and some of the misconceptions I believe there are about design, particularly in science and engineering innovation environments. But we're going to look at timing and the various needs that design addresses when you're building and scaling and growing towards an outcome. We're going to spend a lot of time on design research and the various ways in which that impacts some of the other design professions or design deliverables that you might be in need of. And then we're going to really touch on the customer acquisition and scale side of things. That's not always universally relevant in healthcare innovations, depending on the business model. So I gave you a little bit of my background already. I'll skip through this. But the important thing to note here is that I really tried to be a bridge between the creative side, the business side, the entrepreneurship side, and the technology side. And that bridge applies itself in different ways in different contexts. So I do traditional teaching, but I do also a lot of work advising companies at different phases who are looking to bring design into their process of development and make it a competitive advantage as a startup. So that spans all sorts of industries, from consumer goods to health to climate tech to transportation, civic tech, you name it. And part of where I found this inspiration come from, in a community that hopefully you're all familiar with, is work with VentureWell. And VentureWell, a supporter of the NSF and ICFF programs, it really a intersection between science, engineering, and entrepreneurship. And over the years at Art Center here in Pasadena, we've worked closely with VentureWell on a number of grants, and they're very interested in the integration between design and traditional innovation and entrepreneurship. Some of the things that we're going to talk about today. I also get to work with Caltech Entrepreneurs Forum, volunteer with a group that plans the longest running entrepreneurship program in Southern California, perhaps even in the West Coast. It's been going since 1984, and have been able to learn from a huge array of entrepreneurs, particularly folks coming from a lab and an intellectual property tech transfer environment. And then a variety of work with Pasadena and startups across the life sciences here. And most importantly, a project that we worked on with Cedars-Sinai Hospital and Research Group in Southern California, that I'm sure is also very connected to the Stanford, and I know there's joint research and with both Stanford and UCSF. And this project was the first ever study to look at how digital technology affected health of a population of a city. So this project was designed to better understand how people might access activities and healthful behaviors through prompts and through software and wearable technology. And that project is ongoing, but really got me thinking about how design plays a pivotal role. And importantly here, we'll touch on the one of the things that I think is so important to this expanded definition of design, and maybe to play back in your head the thing that you thought was well designed, is that for the most part, and for me, the important aspect of design is that it focuses on outcomes. That a fork is about carrying food, a car is about moving an individual or an object, and a phone is about communicating. That as artifacts, the fork, the car, the phone, without their functional outcome, they are relatively purposeless. So thinking about outcomes and results rather than artifacts, or rather than static objects, items, physical things, starts to help you understand where I'm going here. And particularly in the science and medical world, there's a lot of fixed parameters, things like molecules or compounds, drawings, blueprints, engineering specs. And oftentimes founders and entrepreneurs refer to these as design, and they refer to them as the design. You know, we're going to work up a design based on the engineering, material components that will solve the problem. And often this is perceived to be as a fixed thing, that it happens once and that you leave the lab or leave the research environment with the design. But this really misses what is happening in the expanded definition. And that's a shift from a noun to a verb. The design of something is very different than designing something. And you all are in the process of designing companies, or potentially nonprofits, but most likely companies that are not going to stay static, that these companies are going to be constantly changing, evolving, iterating, pivoting, and seeing that both in terms of the product that you might be offering and in terms of the structure through which you are going to bring that to market and bring that to your customer or user or patient, that this process is not fixed. The outdated framework sees typically a technical founder and a business founder coming together to push an innovative idea into the market and bring back money. And the number of times I've tried to convince people to think about what their founding team looks like and how it might expand to include a chief design officer or a design lead. And often the argument is, well, we don't have money for that. And that is really a weak argument, and you'll see why. So as we're talking through this, there's a entrepreneur and innovator, Chris Garabedian, who runs Zontogeny, which is a HealthTech innovation resource. And he recently on a podcast said something that really sparked my thinking and aligned with a lot of what I'm trying to communicate here, which is that what makes a drug? It's not the molecule, it's the information attached to a given molecule, the product of the design of the experiments that we choose to run that molecule through. And that is critical. The design of the experiments, it is a continuous effort. And this brings me to the kind of three key points I want to make to you about why design is going to differentiate your path. And that first, it radically reduces risk by reducing the cost to iterate, by building in onto your team the ability to change paths, to redefine systems, to rewrite, publish, repost, reconstruct, rather than relying on an external resource to make those shifts is hugely important. It also enhances the quality of your data, which is really the sort of lifeblood of most health tech medical innovations. Designing trials and tests effectively ultimately leads to better data capture and a better story, a better, more convincing path to tell your investors, to your potential regulators or other stakeholders, to your potential physicians who might be prescribing something, or so on and so forth. And then lastly, that design centers the patients and users in the outcomes of innovation work. So that right there should be enough to convince you, but how does that really play out? What does that look like? And what do I really mean by reducing the cost to iterate and so on? So going back to that argument that I sometimes have with founders about why bringing design onto your team at an early phase is important, they cite the argument of cost. Well, we can't give away more equity. We can't divide up our seed funding. We can't. And they're right. There is an added cost. But that added cost, when played out over the lifetime of a venture, radically reduces the cost over time, because it builds in the iterative, responsive nature that is often lacking otherwise. So this really reinforces the notion of active continuous design in your venture development, and to not see design as a one-off, as a fixed, finished thing that you get polished up and show to your customer or to your investor, but that actually this is happening constantly over time. And that changes as you successfully pass through the gates, the hurdles, the roadblocks, the major barriers in building your business. And so I would propose then an updated definition or an updated map of how a founding team can work. And that positions design as a vehicle between the needs and behaviors of the stakeholders that you're working for, and the team that might have the technical operational expertise to go to market. And what this looks like is really versatile value creation, that design and designers are capable of producing a huge array of outputs. Some of those outputs might be customer facing. Some of those outputs might be team facing. Some of them might be market and brand facing. Some of them might be really technical and to do with it, the actual functionality and working behavior of a product or system. And this is where the value is. This is where, both in learning the design process yourself, but also in finding a person or a studio that you can work with over the course of your venture's lifespan. So in doing all of this, design is really generating narrative. It's providing a vehicle to share information and capture response from the reception of that information. And this is everything. This is really what an effective clinical trial looks like. This is what an effective ad campaign looks like. This is what an effective pitch deck for your seed funding or for your spot at the Catalyst program might look like. And I show this example of a fountain in Italy, and the point of this is to show that, yes, there's great design in water flowing in an open public environment that can be used to quench the thirst of a traveler, but it misses the point that there's also a giant aqueduct that is required to bring that water to that thirsty person. And so thinking about design as this two-way street, both between the system itself and between the end product or the end experience that a customer or user might be having, and being able to move back and forth between those things. In this way, design it brings this two-way street to the table, and is really core to the lean methodology. And at this point, the lean method, it's very, very well-trodden territory. But what you get when you bring design to the table is an ability to maximize the lean method, to maximize the speed of testing, learning, and building. And this really, therefore, demonstrates the secret power of sticky notes, which is that they are impermanent. And the reason that they are so useful and so critical to collaborative, innovative thinking is because of that lack of permanence, because they can be constantly reorganized with new insights and information. And ultimately, that's what's going to get you to the invention of the light bulb, not a lot of time tinkering on form and shape and wiring, so forth. So back to Chris and back to this, to what he shared in this podcast. When you're working on these large and challenging products to bring into the medical field, whether they require FDA approval or any number of other massive hurdles, you're going to have to be thinking a long way in the future. And you're going to have to be going back and forth between predicting and redesigning your path. And that is where the most effective entrepreneurship lies. When you look at a target product profile, this is something that I know is very familiar to you all. You're making a lot of designerly actions. You're looking at things from the point of view of who, what, where, when, why, how, and how much. And so it would then make a lot of sense in building those predictive pathways, those targets, to utilize those skills beyond just sort of future forecasting of what your product or therapeutic might be able to do. So importantly, and we're running towards the end here. There's still a few more sections to go, but I'll be fast. I want to make sure we get time for you all. It's really important to determine, and that's why I asked what kind of organization or company or product you're forming. What's that path look like? How long is the path? What's the typical arc in that path? What are some of the major hurdles that, oops, I'm going the wrong way here, huh? That's weird. Okay, there we go. The typical hurdles that you are going to have to encounter, and what are the outputs that you're going to need to design to effectively pass through those. And not all of those are going to be creative outputs. They're not all going to look like a campaign or a landing page or a product package or a brand or something that can be thought of as a product in that way. But every aspect has constraints. And one of the examples I'd like to share is that in reviewing for VentureWell and reviewing grant applications for early stage funding for venture development, the teams that take the opportunity to design their proposals according to the framework of the submission guidelines are rare. And in fact, lots of teams just throw together all of their information into a text document, which might be great information, but do themselves a huge disservice when it comes to the review process, because they're not making it possible for the audience to understand what they're actually doing in an easy way. So that's a great example of designing your grant application. It's not just, it doesn't just come out of your computer ready to go. And I really want you to take that with you every step of the way. So as you go through your process, and I love this idea of a W-shaped career as an entrepreneur, you're not a T, you're not an I, you're going up and down between different types of knowledge and expertise and different levels of detail. And I would argue that diving deep into design will pay huge amounts of rewards when you move through this process from startup to actually managing and growing a company. So as I've kind of talked about a few times in different ways, needs change over time. And I've tried to break down these different challenges over 4 phases, and then to help you understand what design resources apply to those phases. So phase 1, often probably where most of you are, it really requires support of a general design toolkit. And that might be an individual or a team or a compilation of teams and resources. Doesn't necessarily mean you hire somebody right away, but finding that resource or building that resource within your company to focus on the underlying brand and mission and point of view of your organization. This is really huge because this gives you guiding principles to navigate all of the complexity that will follow. And when you don't do that, when you don't really sink into and visualize and conceptualize what that mission and vision and core values are, and put that out there on a landing page or in a pitch deck, you're creating a potential for serious weakness, particularly when it comes to the aggressive funding competition that you're going to encounter. So getting that point of view and your unique brand as a healthcare venture, health tech venture, is incredibly important. Then phase two, and phase two might come quite quickly behind phase one, or they might happen in tandem, is building the research capacity. And design research, when married with scientific research and psychological or behavioral research, is one of the key differentiators for a successful large technology and health companies. And that research process, again, doesn't necessarily look like design with a capital D. It doesn't necessarily look like a logo or a brand or a landing page or an app in the app store or a product on a shelf or a drug in a prescription environment. But what it generates are all kinds of lowercase design, all kinds of assets, data, storytelling opportunities, facilitation opportunities, bringing together your customers, your users, potentially people who are in trials or tests. But there's all kinds of other factors in that. And this area is just booming in the technology sphere. So companies like Google and Apple and IBM are building design research teams in the same way that they built design teams 20 years ago. And we'll go into a little bit more about that. Then when you're in the phase 3 stage, which is when you've actually got a pretty clear sense of your product, pretty clear sense of your team, a sense of the timeline and the budget, there's going to be a need for some kind of digital, physical design, whether that's representing your product in a marketplace, whether that's showing the underlying innovation in visualizing it in a new way, whether that's designing a model or a working prototype. And that is where a lot of times companies fall down again, because it's very difficult to build those relationships and find that team member right away. It's a competitive market for design talent, and finding a group that you can grow with is everything. And then when you sort of move through the product release and you're into actually growth and scale and being out and competing in the market, having a deep design strategy and both interaction, product, and industrial design are all key to operating any company. I don't know one that doesn't need some combination of those skills and teams. So we'll break this down a little bit into the different categories and fields so you can see where those connect, and then we'll wrap up from there. So design research, and this really covers the category of design thinking, which from my definition is the process in which you collaboratively address a question and synchronize the insights from a group, and through a huge array of activities and possible formats and structures. But really, the design thinking process is a group collaborative brainstorming that is intended to generate friction and ideation and a lot of the things that are needed to think about competition and getting out with a leg up. It's also critically important to note that this field of design research blends qualitative and quantitative insights. So folks are trained in looking at large data sets as they are in looking at behavior and the ways that individuals might act, or the material, formal side of qualitative assessment. Understanding human factors, understanding issues around how people might behave in this process. Prototyping, and we'll go into that in more detail, particularly prototyping, because that's something that you'll all be benefiting from if you follow this path. Facilitation, developing user personas, mapping scenarios, sketching, and really working in a fast and quick way. So moving along the path into interaction design, helping you distinguish the difference between these fields is important. Interaction design focusing very much on the combination of technology, product, and experience, and really looking at code and computation as a lens for understanding how interaction happens. That might be in traditional UX or interface design, but it also spans a wide array of web and mobile application development, working with AI and machine learning and algorithmic design, developing robotics and computational tools, software, game design. And all of those might be the key need that you have in getting through a hurdle as a company. So developing a low-cost game to demonstrate the effectiveness of a drug might be the kind of thing that would convince an investor to give you Series A funding. When you're looking at the long and arduous path to market, all of these areas can provide an advantage, and all of them might also inform your end product. So graphic design, this is fairly self-explanatory, but the devil is in the details. Being consistent about the way that you're communicating, the way that your product, the way that your organization demonstrates how to use it, how to learn about it, how to choose it amongst others, why you should trust it in a potentially life critical situation. And I share this array of Johnson & Johnson, now Kenvue, consumer health brands, because the brands speak for themselves. And the reason that J&J was able to spin out the Kenvue organization, which is valued at I think $20 billion, is almost, in my view, almost exclusively down to the value of those brands and the way that people engage through understanding those brand reputations and where they, how they might make a choice in a consumer situation. And then lastly, and this integrates with different startups, different types of medical, particularly on the device side, the industrial and product design side. And that is really drawing from the same toolkit that would make people feel like an iPhone is well designed or a Tesla is well designed. That level of human affordance and quality of materials and intelligence is something that's often very much lacking in the health and medical field. So again, it's a matter of knowing that you need to enhance the experience of your product if it's a medical device, and then building that skill set into your team. Both of these are products that I had recent experience with, which I feel represent the best of industrial design in the medical context. So I know I've gone a little bit over my allotted time here, but I wanted to reinforce a few final notes. The power of prototyping and really this underlying value in design research is something that will be essential to your success. Essential to your success every stage of your company. And this is even after you've gone to market and you've had an IPO. How do companies stay relevant? How do they continue to develop insights and understand their customers' behavior, the changing nature of the needs and the desires? And here are some of the things that the design toolkit brings to the table, including design thinking, as we talked about, sketching and diagrams, paper interfaces, storyboards and role-playing, scenario mapping. Here's a group of students at Art Center working on hacking a HTC VR headset. And all of this can be at your fingertips if you build it into your company. But all of it is incredibly expensive and hard to access if you need it in the moment and you're not ready with a viable partner. Want to touch on the power of visualization and data and visualizing data, particularly in medical and health startups. Here's an example of a tool that collaboratively developed between Art Center and HealthTech in a data visualization funded lab. And this is a tool to demonstrate gene expression patterns and to show those succinctly in a visual way to help with the research and experimentation process. And then last, I wanted to touch on a company that actually came out of the Stanford Biodesign program, which really is a singing example of building design into your strategy. The company M, which is a smart package for birth control, pill delivery, and management. From day one, and I got to meet them very early on in their process, they understood that design applied to every aspect of their path to market. Not just the website, not just the brand, not just the product or package, but the entire integration. And these skills are hugely valuable when it comes to scaling and understanding what actually is driving your customer behavior. And an example here in LabTwin, a spin out that was acquired by a German medical company for assisting in laboratory experimentation. This team totally understands the issues that their customer is facing, capturing data in real time, saving time and preventing mistakes, achieving a paperless lab. These very short, very succinct bullets on value, on the value proposition of this technology, are exactly what is needed to bring customers aboard. So a little bit of my philosophy on all of this is, as you're going, offer value before asking for money. This stands in every step of your process. What can you do to create value for your potential customers, for people who might be doing a survey or might be testing something out or might be in a trial? How can you focus on educating them and providing information that stands alone from maybe your goals, and that this educational value leads to engagement, and engagement leads to relationships. And a few books that I find very useful, which hopefully you're familiar with, but particularly Talking to Humans and Testing with Humans. I'm really understanding that process better, how to be more effective with that, and bringing design into that process. And then Discipline Entrepreneurship over at MIT, really useful guideline. And that is me. So I'll stop my share.
Yeah, that was great, Robbie. Thank you very, very much. Wonderful. I know I have a couple questions, but before I do that, is there anyone in the audience who has any questions of Robbie? Yeah, well, maybe while folks are thinking, feel free to use the raise hand function and I'll kind of kick one off. So, a lot of the students that we have at UCSF, they're MD students or they're clinical fellows, they're, medical residents, they're getting a postdoc in some, very, niche thing like a CRISPR-Cas9. And, they get into the weeds of what they're working on so well and so deeply. And, you've kind of told us how important design is at all these different levels. How does somebody who has a background, strong science, strong medical background, really get that next, how do they dip their toes even more into design?
Great question. And I think that aside from advocating for a formal path and coming to Art Center and taking a graduate program or taking online classes, the essence to it is very similar to the scientific method, and that is trial and error with framework attached. So as maybe you feel like, wow, this is all way beyond my skill set or what I've studied, or how I've been thinking about myself. And firstly, I would say that it's not true, actually, because design is really deeply a part of being human and the way that we think, the way that we address problems. But the key to learning is trial and error. So take a stab at something that you feel maybe you're not confident in and show it to somebody and hear what they say. And that might be really hard at first, like, peer review within the lab is one thing, but taking something that you're not really very good at and don't feel like you understand very well, and take a test at it. And you might find that you need to hire somebody, that you need to find a studio or a team or an individual freelancer who can help you. But trying yourself is paramount, and seeing the results of that. And it never goes away. And adopting that approach, you might not generate the best logo. You might really struggle to figure out how to use the software or whatever tool, although AI is also your friend in a lot of this. So yeah, I think the most important thing is trying, testing, and refining.
Yeah, that's really good. A really good insight. We think of entrepreneurship quite often and using the scientific method towards entrepreneurship. And so using that scientific method towards design, I could see how incredibly applicable that is.
Well, right. And design is really about testing assumptions and say, well, does this work this way? And how many times do we need to test it to be sure that it does or does not work? And I think there's such a affinity there with the really like capital scientific method that you all practice.
Yeah, absolutely. Sweet. Any questions from the audience?
And if you don't have questions, that is okay. Sometimes what I've found with these sessions is that folks do tend to want to follow up on something specific. So I'm available for that. And would love your feedback. If you really disagree, definitely let me know. But I strongly believe that this is something that's approachable, that is developed in practice. I don't know, I surf a lot, but I learned to surf as an adult primarily. And design is a lot like surfing. It's a lot of time where you're not doing it very well. And it takes a lot of those hours, you have to put those in. So as a company, putting those in early and developing something that doesn't really do the best job makes you that much more prepared for when you have to develop the next phase once you've got Series A funding. And now you've got that pressure of an investor in a board and whatever other drivers, you want to learn it now, and it can be fun.
Awesome. I have a question if no one else has anything. What are like the elements of a well-designed product or company? Like, what do you typically look for with these things, if there's like a standard?
Yeah, so I think that, at least from my perspective, the thing to look for is consistency and detail, so that there is, across every piece of what you're looking at, the front door all the way to the sort of little detail along the hallway lighting, and how those come together, whether that is seamless or clunky, and you can break it down into a sort of a maybe more rigorous assessment, looking at form and color and material and line and space and lighting, and the sort of, in design, you get as detailed as the spacing between the letters, all the way to the the global view of the building illuminated on the skyline. And yeah, I think consistency, clarity, lack of confusion. Does it make sense? Do you understand? You looking at, I'm strongly in favor of Apple, although I love all sorts of technology products. People often say an iPhone is well designed because all of the parts function as part of a whole, and you're very rarely at an error screen. You're very rarely having programs freeze or crash, very rarely finding spam or other issues getting in the way of achieving your purpose, which is checking your email or texting your friend or finding directions to lunch.
Okay, awesome. That totally makes sense. Like taking a very thorough.
Well, all right. Well, I think we're gonna call it unless there are any audience questions. Robbie, one of the things I noticed that you were talking about TPPs, and so a quick plug for the Catalyst internship, where folks work with UCSF principal investigators to create those TPPs. So maybe Robbie, you and I could talk more about design and TPP specifically, because we've put a lot of importance into that.
I would love to explore that.
Sweet. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for attending. We'll get your emails. We'll add you to the different listservs for further iterations with events like this with Robbie and others. We really appreciate you guys being here. And again, our most heartfelt thanks to Robbie for all this. You really, put a lot of time and energy into this, and the efforts and energy that you put into this are really what help our programs grow, as well as all the individuals that we also help to grow along that path. So thank you very, very much.
Everyone, yeah, basically.
My pleasure. Really enjoyed it, and don't hesitate to get in touch, all of you Zoom people. I'm a real person, and you can reach out to me whenever you like. All righty.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nate and Shirley.